All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode here on the Lure Lab. As always, I am your host, the captain, Andrew Full. Exciting episode today. We have Ben Nowak joining us, and we're going to be talking about finesse underspin fishing. And for those who are familiar with the underspin technique, you've seen like the Bassmaster Classic in the past get one on it by Casey Ashley. I believe that was on Lake Hartwell, throwing a heavier underspin on casting gear in the winter. But underspins are, in my opinion, one of the more underutilized techniques for summertime fishing in really any season of the year. They always get bit, they emit a ton of flash, and that's why I'm excited to have Ben on here, because I know his forte is going to be finesse underspins, and that's what we're really diving into, is how to get more bites and to put more bass into the boat using this technique. So without me rambling more, let's get Ben on here and really dive into it. Hey, Ben, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. You know, I never know to call you Ben or Benjamin. Which one do you prefer?
Ben is perfect.
Ben.
It's just perfect. So natural just to type Benjamin.
Yeah, I understand. Like, everybody calls me Andy, but I always type Andrew or write out Andrew on everything. So it's kind of funny. I had to ask. How's Michigan?
Exactly. It's good. I was talking with some buddies, and the Great Lakes are fishing a little tougher than usual this year, at least around here, Lake Huron.
Yeah.
MLF guys came out, and so we're trying to find some sneaky stuff where we can still catch some fish and some inland fish. So it's good.
Yeah. Do you ever fish like the inland lakes that like dump into all the Great Lakes? Like, what? There's some big ones, right? Like there's Burt and Mullet, and
yeah. So those are a lot further north. Those are a lot bigger lakes. That's about 2.5 hours from here. So I don't fish those very often. They get pounded super heavily in the fall and in the spring. Most of the stuff that I fish is like small glacial inland lakes. So like a few hundred to 1,000 acre lakes.
That's my jam right there. I don't want you to name those lakes by any means.
No,
but yeah,
it's just awesome to get on like these tiny lakes. You go out there, like you can really dial in some cool bites, and that's what I love to do. Like if I'm not on the big water, it's a total polar opposites. But if I'm not on the big water, I like those like inland glacial bodies of water, smaller.
Yeah, I wish we had more of like 1,000 acre, 2,000 acre lakes that were glacial in New York. Like for me, really to come into that style of lake, I have to go to the Adirondacks, which is like 4 hours away, where every turn there's like a new lake, and some have bass, some have just salmon in them, some have like kokanee salmon, some have Atlantic, some have splake, some are like pure pike fisheries and trout. I'm like, it's a whole different world up there. But yeah, we don't have much around here except for giant smallmouth.
Which you can't ever complain. Yeah, which you can't really complain about, though.
You know, I mean, it's impossible to complain about. We're very fortunate where we live, but after like being on the water 60 days in a row, seeing smallmouth every single day, you get a little tired of them with the finesse rod. But
yeah,
I think that's like an important thing in this. Like the finesse underspin bite is a bite that I don't think anyone could ever get tired fishing. So.
No. We'll dive into why.
Yeah,
I love it, right? This is one of the approaches that I've started to pick up over the past 2 years now. Since I started talking to Dan Miguel over at Great Lakes Finesse. That's going to be the main underspin that I'm going to talk about, but it's just a really fun way to fish. Like it's a very visual approach. It's covering water, shallow water for me. And it's something total opposite than going out deep and dropping or like throwing heavy weight on. So
absolutely. So without further ado, right, like what exactly is a finesse underspin?
So for me, like I mentioned, I'm talking mainly your Great Lakes Finesse style underspin. This is 3/16 of an ounce, and it has a 1/0 very light wire hook. So it's a really, really small profile. It's very similar to like your marabou hair jig in a really compact profile. So you take like a drop shot bait and you put it on the back, and you have like a 3-inch presentation. So it's a really, really light presentation. It's a bait that you can cover water with, and it gets a ton of bites. It's not just like a bass catcher. It will show you what's in the area, and it will draw a lot of fish. And the crazy thing about this bait is how much drawing power it has. Like for every fish you catch, you're going to see probably 2 to 3 fish.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar. Like my approach to this, and we'll get into it, is very similar to the way I fish a hair jig. And there's different times and places for both baits, but the overall approach is pretty similar.
I like it. Now, with that underspin, right? Like, do you keep it pretty standard? I see you're holding up a black head with
Yeah.
a blade, but like, when would do you ever use like a white head or a silver head or just an unpainted one? If when would you use a gold blade over a silver blade?
So for me, the head color is going to depend on the bait that I'm pairing with it and what I'm trying to imitate. So if I'm in really clean water and I know they're fishing on small shad or small minnows, I'm going to go with like a silver head and then like a shad colored bait, like this Excite Minobi. This is the real shad color, or I'll put like a clear perch on here if I'm imitating shiners.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm just imitating leeches or bugs or just want like a good all around, like my favorite all around is just straight black. Like straight black, you absolutely cannot beat. Um, I don't really know what it imitates, but it has a ton of drawing power. It silhouettes really well, and fish just tend to eat this thing. So I would say the straight black is the one that I'm going to use the most. And then the gold versus the silver blade. Silver blade most of the time. The gold blade for me is going to be anytime that I'm fishing when it's overcast or cloudy, or if the water gets off color down me and I still want to try to force this bite, I'll throw it with the gold blade.
I like it. So we know what the best underspin head is now for finesse fishing. Can you talk about the hook on there? Because I mean,
Yeah,
people can go out and find that jig head, and the one thing that they'll read is mixed reviews on it because of the hook, right? And the hook is
yeah.
a very light wire hook, so kind of talk about it real fast.
So I've talked to some guys and they're like, man, I go out and I catch a couple fish and that hook starts to get really soft on me. What the biggest problem is, this is a very, very, very light wire hook. We were talking prior to this. Um, it's made by owner, so it's super, super sharp, but it is their like lightest wire hook that they make, I would say, with the exception of like panfish hooks. So you have to use a soft rod and you don't set the hook. Like this isn't a technique where you really lean into them and load in. Like you keep reeling and a lot of times your bait just gets soft or it feels missing and you just turn your body and you just reel a little bit faster. It's very similar to a drop shot hook set where you just speed up your retrieve and then turn your body into that fish and you let the rod load up and drive the hook. If you
Hey,
swing on these fish, like I
you're
think
breaking it.
you're going to either bend the hook or you're going to start to get to the point where you're actually pulling this fish away from or pulling this bait away from those fish because this is a moving bait approach. So it's not something we have to swing with. It's similar to a hair jig in the sense like my hair jig approach, cast, slow, steady retrieve, just like literally as slow as you can turn that handle to get this blade to spin. And then when they bite it, speed up my reel and just turn because all I'm trying to do is make sure that bait is in that fish's mouth and then I want that bait to pull away and set the hook on itself.
Now I'm kind of gonna jump all over the place here on you, and I
That's okay.
apologize. Have you tried to throw it on a BFS setup yet?
No, I'm not a BFS guy.
I,
There's
I
guys that I know love it and they're the ones that like really want to do it. I don't trust. I've had enough issues with like bait casting drags
yeah.
where like I'm a lock that drag down, play it with my thumb kind of guy. So I love the performance of a spinning reel drag. I like that top compression on a reel, covers the whole reel, and like is super smooth. I don't trust myself with a BFS setup.
I actually, and the reason why I asked is I just picked up a BFS rod like setup. I got a really insane deal on a reel, but I don't have the right rod for it. And the first fish that actually bit the BFS setup, I was just running in like a nose swim bait. We talked about 2 episodes on another lure lab with the guys from Cast, and I'm just slow rolling it, and a fish ate it, and I'd like quick jerk set, not thinking about it, and I like broke my braid, and I'm like, yeah, I can't do that, and I haven't thrown it again since. I'm like, I got to rethink of my approach here because I'm more of a hit them and reel and just grind. But with a spinning rod, I know like with a spy bait or like a real light wired finesse ball head that you just reel and slowly sweep and reel faster. So just with a bait caster, I want to jam them.
The other
So
good thing, man, is like with a hair jig, I'm not a fighter. Like
yeah,
when I hook a fish, I don't like to play it next to the boat and like hope he gets into the net. Like I hit those fish even on a hair jig. Like I'm still turning that handle.
yeah,
But when those fish are coming up behind that bait, I think especially with a hair jig, they're actually moving towards the boat anyway. Like, you speed up that reel and you can actually get that fish coming to the boat. And if you have the net ready, like, just reach in the water and scoop them up. It's very rarely is it ever like a big hard fight next to the boat. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, thank goodness for smallmouth. Sometimes they're just dumb and they jump and they come right in.
That's my thought too. But no, we can talk about my setup real quick since we're on the setup thing. Like, I'm fishing. I'm fishing this on a TFO Tactical Elite 7.6 medium light, and we call it a medium light. It's really more like a light plus. It's a soft rod.
So like deep parabolic to it.
It's really parabolic. Like,
I like that.
Not only like it's still snappy enough where this casts. That my biggest problem with the rod, the reason that rod is perfect for this technique and hair jigs, my biggest problem with the rod is like when you go to cast a light bait and that tip bounces, it drives me nuts. But this bait or this rod snaps out, the tip stays still, and you can get really good casting distance, but it bends so deep into the blank. And so, like, when I turn on these fish, it's the rod doing all the work. The drag does a little bit, but that rod is really key. And then I'm fishing it on 6-pound test fluorocarbon to like 8 or 6 pound braid. And then I fish a top shot. So this is something I do with a lot of my spinning approaches is fish like a 30-foot leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that basically just to help reduce the shock on that fluorocarbon, especially light fluorocarbon. It's going to keep that bait more leveled out in the water because it sinks. But also, like, when I go to set the hook, if I do pull a little bit hard, it's absorbing it instead of that braid hitting like a 6-foot leader and shocking that fluorocarbon.
So what knot do you tie? Do you use an FG or an Alberto knot?
The Alberto.
I'm an Alberto guy too.
I can't get it down. I've not had any issues with it.
Yeah, I'm like, what's the old saying? Don't fix what's not broken. And all these guys that I'm finding, like, as carrier count braid goes up, because now we're starting to get like 8s, 9s, 12s. There's a brand out there with a 16 carrier count braid, right? What I'm hearing is with that FG knot, that because of that high carrier braid count, when you're casting, it's actually causing it to like spin, and it's causing a lot of knotting issues on fluorocarbon. So a lot of guys that are running 12 and 16 carrier count braid or 9 are going back to the Alberto and not talking about it because it doesn't spin and wrap up in your guide tray.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I know that I've fished that Alberto for 6 to 8 years now. And it's just a knot I trust a lot.
Yeah, I agree. So, you just have to make sure you wrap the same amount down as you go up and always go through the same side as you came in. Yeah, otherwise, it'll kind of unravel. But
and then you just pull tight and then snip it off and go.
Go back to fishing. I like it. So I do love the 30-foot leader idea. I know a lot of guys that will run short leaders because they think that they can get further casting distance on the light bait. So like I've had guys that are like, yeah, just run like a 6-inch fluorocarbon leader so you only have braid going through the guides. But I'm like, by doing that, you're causing the bait to stay higher in the water column and you're losing all that shock absorption when you set the hook. So on real thin wire, you're going to bend it up, even on a sweep.
The biggest thing to me isn't even the invisibility of the fluorocarbon, right? Like it is what it is. It's literally the way that long fluorocarbon leader makes the bait act, because fluorocarbon is going to sink down. It'll stay pretty much level with your bait. And so if you get 30 foot of leader in front of your bait, it's going to stay very, very horizontal, as opposed to that braid. If your fluorocarbon comes out and then that braid goes up like this, like your bait's going to want to track nose up, and it's just not going to look as natural, especially if you're trying to like trace something. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about real quick, but tracing bottom or tracing a specific contour or tracing a depth where you want that bait to stay at 6 foot down, that fluorocarbon long leader is going to help that bait stay at 6 foot instead of like want to carry up on you.
So here's a good question for you. If you find that fish are, like, say you're fishing a 10-foot flat and you're seeing a lot of fish on your forward that are suspended 4 feet down, will you speed up your reel or will you jump up a leader size to say like an 8 as opposed to 6 to try and keep it higher?
I just speed up. You could do the other. It'd probably be more effective to change your leader, but for me, it's like, we're just going to speed this reel up just a little bit, and we'll just keep it higher.
Yeah. You're telling me you don't have like 32 different spinning rods?
I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'll have them rigged up.
Fair enough. Yeah, man, that's funny. I just thought I'd ask. So you pointed
that's a
out
great one.
2 of the baits that you do put on the underspin. Are there any other baits that you put on there? And do you ever go to like a paddle tail style swim bait, like a 2.8 Kaitak?
I played with a paddle tail, but to me, it like negates the effectiveness of the bait. So, like for me, this is a subtle presentation, and I want it to look like a very subtle presentation. 2 small bait fish coming through the water. Like I think it has a lot of flash and drawing power as it is. That paddle tail almost isn't necessary. And the other weird thing about this bait that caught me off guard when I started to fish it is it actually has like that shimmy in the water.
So it's got a nice list.
Yeah, and I think it's because that blade rotating causes the bait to actually move. When you put a paddle tail on that, it actually overpowers the bait quite a bit.
So list too much, or
it just has a ton of roll and a ton of movement. I just want this to be super subtle, like have very, very limited action, and that's why basically these are the only 2 baits. I played with some max scent baits, but catch 1 fish and that thing's off like you cast it. The benefit of max scent is the scent. The downside of max scent is just how soft that thing is.
Yeah, the one thing I have noticed, because I've played with both of the baits that you have in your hand, one on the Cindy rig, right? And then the Minobi I've been fishing on a drop shot. I'm not drop shot and a Ned rig. And they're extremely durable. And it's weird because they're like 2 entirely different styles. One has no salt in it, and the Great Lakes has a ton of salt, but it's still extremely durable. And I don't know if you know anything about their process of pouring it, but how do they get it so durable with how much salt they put in that thing?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. I could make something up, but I have no clue.
Well, the only reason why I'm asking that too is because I know you pour a lot of soft plastics with doing mold stuff, and that's why I was curious if you've ever.
I have no clue, but this stuff is just really durable.
Yeah.
Like the Minobi is pretty durable too.
Yeah.
And this has no salt. This has 0 salt. So this wants to naturally almost float up versus this, which is when you put it in the water, I would suppose neutrally buoyant.
Very durable. Very durable. To your point, though, you've only stretched it 30 times. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was pulling on the tiniest section of the tail there, but
they'll probably still catch fish.
It does still catch fish. When I get really lazy, I'll just take this. They'll bite off the tail, or it'll rip off when you catch a fish. You just keep throwing it. Both of these baits, what's really cool about these baits on the back of this is this in particular, which this is the Great Lakes Finesse Drop Minnow. What it was designed to pair up with, as well as a drop shot, it fits perfectly with the head. It just has a tiny, tiny, tiny little shimmy off the back versus your Minobi. This is going to have a lot more movement. So this is going to have more of a shimmy. It's not an incredible amount, but it's going to have more shimmy than that drop minnow.
So if they want something that has a little bit more action, you'll throw the Minobi.
And if they really, whichever one's closer to me in the boat. I'll just reach down and grab.
They are smallmouth. So.
Yeah. No, I don't even know that it's necessarily the trailer. I think more than anything, it's the color and the general profile. Gotcha. So having a bait that imitates a bait fish effectively is what makes it so good.
I like it. Have you tried throwing them for largemouth yet? I know you don't chase too many green ones around, but.
No, I haven't really. Kind of my approach with this is it's a really clean water approach. I want the cleanest possible water. I don't want any stain in the water. I want it sunny. I want it clean. I want it flat. And I want to be able to see in the water, but I also want those fish to see the bait. Mm-hmm. For me, that's when this shines, especially with that blade on the back. I'm going to turn it super slow. And then when you start to get off colored, that's when I'm going to pick up your Cindy rig or a hair jig. I don't know what it is necessarily, but when it gets cloudy and overcast and maybe a little bit of color to the water, something about this bait just doesn't seem to catch them as well, which
I've
seems
noticed that as well.
Counterintuitive, especially with the blade. But they just don't seem to eat this as well as they would a hair jig. So
it's weird.
It's a really weird counterintuitive thing, but I've thrown it to the point where I'm okay, it's not clean, it's cloudy, It just doesn't catch them quite as
Here's
good.
a random question for you. You can tell me to like pound salt if you want. Have you tried to tie marabou onto the underspin head
I'm sure it'd be great.
and make like a hybrid?
I'm sure it'd be awesome. I love marabou. I'm like a marabou fanatic.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't tried it.
Now it looks like I gave you a little project to go tie up and try
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, that's funny. So would you say one of the more important aspects of your setup now is going to be the reel, right? Because you want something with like a super smooth drag when you do
Yeah.
sweep them that it can pull out cleanly. Did you touch what kind of reel you use? I might have missed it, but
No, I use so the other critical thing about reel that I might have missed is I use a super slow speed gear ratio. So like a lot of these reels for a long time, the deal with spinning reels is you couldn't get a fast enough one. Like you couldn't get like a 6-7 speed gear ratio spinning reel. Now you can't get like less than a 6 speed gear ratio. The only company that I've found that makes a really good one is Fluker. And I know Abu Garcia, I think, is coming out with the Winch series,
Like the
which is a
winch.
5-speed. But you want to go with that 5-speed gear ratio. Turn that as slow as you can, similar to a hair jig. And so I'm using a Fluger Supreme, possibly. One of the Fluger 5-speed 35 size.
Love it.
Big capacity.
Incredible drag for those reels as well.
Yeah, it's like a $90 reel, and it has like incredible drag.
It's funny, like for under, and this is a tangent real fast, for under $100 reels, I've only found 2 reels that have like insanely smooth drag, and it's one every Fluger reel. Doesn't matter if it's the President at $49 or the Supreme at $79, all the way to like their $230 reels. The Patriarch, I think it was.
Yep.
Like the drag on those are incredible. But then you can go and buy like a $30. I think it was like an Akuma. I can't remember which brand it is, but it was all black with like all kinds of porting on the spool itself. That thing's drag was absolutely unreal for like a $30 reel.
The other one is that Shimano NASCI.
The Nasi or whatever.
Yeah, which I've had some poor luck with other Shimano reels, but that NASCI, the Nasi, I've had some pretty decent luck with. So
yeah, I've actually sold all my Shimano stuff. I'm not a fan of like, I had a Vanford.
Okay.
And like, it's a great reel, but the drag was almost inconsistent. Like I wouldn't even adjust it and I'd fight a fish and I'd hook another one and just by zoop, I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I have all Tatulas and what's the other one? I just picked up a Kahe or Kaji or whatever it's called, KG.
Okay.
That's the drag on it's incredible for a $200 reel. So
I'm a big drag guy. Like a reel's got to have really good drag. Don't really care about much else. Like
I want it to be somewhat smooth on the retreat.
Oh yeah.
And I want it to be just buttery smooth when that fish is peeling drag.
The biggest thing on a spinning reel that drives me nuts is when you get that click in the handle. Like when you're turning a slow hair jig or a slow underspin and it goes, and you're like, oh, that's driving me nuts.
It's driving you nuts, but if you think about it, it's probably giving that hair jig the tiniest little flutter.
Yeah, that's why I'm catching fish.
So it's like, okay, but now you can count it like how fast you're going. So it's like 1, 2, 3, click. You're like, okay, I got the speed.
Yeah, never thought about that either.
It's your own little timer, right? So we're going to wrap this up real fast. Is there anything else that you think we should touch on about this before I ask you one last question?
Yeah, it's going to be the area and kind of where I'm fishing this thing. So 3/16 of an ounce bait. It's pretty light. With that long rod, you can get a lot of distance between you. This is a very visual approach, very visual approach for me. So I'm typically fishing it in less than 12 foot of water. I want to be able to see what I'm fishing. So I'm fishing color changes. I'm fishing isolated boulders. I'm fishing isolated, grass patches, and I'm trying to either stay above that piece of cover. So if I'm fishing a boulder, like I'm trying to stay like just above it, or if I'm fishing color changes, I'm trying to stay like just above bottom and basically trace the contour. So what that means is like if I'm sitting in deep water in 10 to 12, 15 foot of water and I'm dropping off the ledge, I'm trying to reel that bait along the ledge and then adjust my cadence so that bait stays on bottom as it comes down or off the ledge.
I like it. It's good.
It's a very visual approach. That's what makes it so much fun. Like this shines when your deep fish don't want to play and it's super flat, calm, and sunny. and those fish get up shallow on that piece of cover, like that's when I'm going to go up shallow and throw this thing.
I'm sure, like with the 5/16 ounce too, it would shine really well in like that intermediate range where you can't see the cover, but you know it's there. And if you and if you have forward and you can really get it lined up with that forward and watch him come up and eat it, like my mind is going nuts on it. So
I'm sure it'd be great. I'm very much like deep, shallow, like
nothing in between.
The in between is like a spy bait or something other. So
like I got 30 foot here and I got to go 200 feet to get to 8 feet. So let me pick up a spy bait real fast and chuck it 3 times while I'm going on at like a half mile an hour to get there. I love it. Yeah. So the final question of the show, Ben, is our Do It Molds juice of the show because of tackle customization and everything. But the question is, why should someone always have an underspin setup tied on when they're on the water?
Oh, dude, it is such a versatile technique that catches so many fish. Like this is something that I have tied on from the second week of May, first week of May, until the third week of September, because when those fish get up shallow and they're feeding on any sort of bait fish up in the water column, this is a technique that I know I can catch fish on.
I love it. Absolutely.
It's like they call Great Lakes Finesse calls it a fish vacuum. It really is. Like the amount of bass and smallmouth and large. I've caught some largemouth on it playing with it.
I'm sure spots will eat it down south too for our southern listeners.
Panfish eat this thing. Pike bite them off all the time. Like it just catches fish. Like if there's fish in an area, they'll bite this thing.
And at $6.99 for one, product disclaimer, they aren't cheap, but I believe Omnia has them, but they might be out of stock because they go really, really quick when they do come into stock. Just beware when you do purchase them, they are $6.99 for one. So when you go to throw 17 of them in the cart, you know that you're only getting one bait per pack. So
you're getting 17.
Yeah, 17 for $200. So good luck to everyone who wants to buy them, but they do work. There's a lot of photos out there of people catching them, and Ben has been catching them with this. So I think it's a good product for you to put in the cart when you are shopping at Omnia. So, Ben, I want to say thank you for taking the time tonight to come on and talk finesse underspinning. It was a great time. I appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. And then we look forward to seeing you again in October. That'll be fun when you come up here. So
yeah, I can't wait.
We'll catch some smallmouth. Hopefully the weather plays nice to us. I have a feeling it's going to be a really early winter this year, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I hope so.
I don't know if you guys have seen it up there, but like we have like year of young maple trees, you know, the ones that are only like 10 foot tall. They're all in Western New York. They're starting to change colors already.
I know. I talked to my buddies about it. I'm noticing color change in the trees already, and I'm like, dude, this is supposed to happen for like another month.
3 to 4 weeks. It's like, what is going on? But just the other day, I was on the lake before I let you go. I saw 2 flocks of geese flying south in a V formation. And I'm like, it's August. Like,
that's really bad.
Second week of August. Like, what? And I was talking to a buddy about it. He goes, yeah, I saw that like 3 weeks ago. And I'm
like, are your fish moving shallow already?
Well, that's a funny question.
We talked about that.
It's a funny question because we always have fish shallow, but like we have fish that are already in like September pattern that shouldn't be in September pattern. So this is like the super wicked deep pattern. Like they were there 2 weeks ago. And then we have fish in current that normally don't show up for another like 3 weeks.
That's really scary.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is going to be rough. And then I had to go and move into the snow belt. So like I might be putting my boat away early this year. So we'll see. Last year I put it away a week before Thanksgiving because we got 90 inches of snow. So hopefully we don't get that again. I better get the snowblower tuned up here before November.
It's disgusting to even think about.
Oh, yeah. I want to gag. So, well, Ben, before we tangent on here about unwanted stuff to be listened to by our viewers and listeners, I appreciate it. And we'll talk soon, buddy.
For sure. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode here on the Lure Lab, where we broke down finesse underspin fishing with Ben Nowak. Guy catches a ton of big smallmouth over in the Michigan area. So make sure you look up his YouTube and go over there and give him a subscribe and follow him on all social media. He has a ton of awesome content where you just see giant smallmouth, and he's very educational about it. We'll break down techniques and how to catch them, etc. So make sure you head over there, subscribe, and give him a follow. And if you're on YouTube and you're new here, please hit the subscribe button here on the Lure Lab. We appreciate it. Leave a comment down below if you've ever used the finesse underspin technique. If you're on MP3 like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. This helps the podcast be seen by more people as they are scrolling through looking for the ultimate fishing podcast to listen to. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in every week, and we will see everyone next Saturday.